Hey guys, welcome to another episode of BBQ Talk. On today's episode, we'll be talking about should you cook your briskets with tallow. Before we get into this video, for those of you guys who are interested in learning how to render out your own tallow, especially after you do all your trimming with your briskets, I made a video on that, so I'll leave the link to that in the top corner. So recently I've been getting asked that question a lot of whether or not I cook my briskets with tallow, and just to simply answer that question, I don't. I just more so in this video want to talk about in what instances I guess you should or could cook with tallow, but I don't really think it's necessary. Just like most of the stuff that I talk about and a lot of I guess little tricks that people use, I don't personally use it, but I also do think, again, it's important to talk about why you would use them in the first place. So I want to talk about two instances in, I guess, throughout an entire process of cooking a brisket, or like from cooking to serving, when people would use it the most. Method number one is adding tallow to the wrap itself. Now, it's something that I know there are a couple places that in Austin that I've been to that use this method. I've been to those places. The brisket's great. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I also don't really think there's anything significantly better about cooking a brisket that way. Just to be clear, I've never personally done this method before, but that's only because I'm just used to doing things that I like my own method and kind of my process of doing things, and because I'm used to doing a lot of volume, I haven't really spent so much time to like slow down to add an extra step of adding tallow to the wrap. For me, it just kind of slows down the efficiency of kind of getting the briskets all wrapped up so that you can finish the cook. If I felt that the other briskets that I've tried from those places that do use tallow in the wrap like tasted significantly better, then I probably would have thought, you know what, maybe we should try this, but I haven't really found that to be true. So I guess the question is, what is the method of adding fat to the wrap? And again, this is just my own thoughts and my ideas of why they might be doing this. And one is, anytime you're cooking in fat, I mean, it's not a bad thing, right? But I also, the only reason why I chose not to play around with it was, one, I liked the method I liked. I was able to do it quicker, but also, I talk a lot about cooking briskets where you're trying to, take away a good amount of moisture so that you can start to develop a good bark, and also, while you're in our traditional wrap, you're still having enough liquid in the paper at the end of the day. So I didn't feel like I needed any extra liquid to be used to help to make that brisket tender at the end. I always worried that the lean might become a little bit too soft or might just shred a little bit too much because of that fat. So I personally haven't done it for those reasons. The other time you might see beef tallow being used in terms of, like I said, going from cooking to serving, is probably having tallow being added to on top of specifically briskets and beef ribs, like after the finished cooking. It's I don't think it's really necessary to do that. A lot of people will do it because they're trying to create that extra shine, that look on the surface of the brisket, so that when you are opening up a pack or opening up a butcher paper, when you're on the cutting board, you see a lot of pictures of people's like oohing and awing because it looks like it's really, there's a lot of juice that's coming out, but really it's just the extra fat that's not really coming from the cook itself, but from that fat that's added to the paper to kind of give that extra look and that extra moisture. It really depends. Again, you guys hear me talk a lot about preferences. It really depends on what type of bark that you're trying to create on top of your brisket. If you're trying to spend a lot of time creating a really nice textured bark, and then afterwards you're pouring fat on top of it, it is going to lose some of its texture. For that reason, like, I know that when you're wrapping in paper, you're not getting a super crunchy bark, and so but I do want a little bit of textural difference, so I think pouring fat on top of it is really being counterintuitive to what I'm looking for in my end product. So at the end of the day, again, it really depends on what you're looking for, what type of cook you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to again, at the end product, what you want the texture brisket to be. So If you are looking for something that's a little bit softer, then you can go for that and add the tallow to the wrap. So I would say that if you are maybe finding issues with possibly having like really lean briskets, then maybe you can think ahead of time and say that you're going to add a little bit of fat to the wrap. But if you're thinking that recently a lot of your cooks have been coming out to where your leans are really tight, and that's the reason why you're going to add fat to it to loosen it up. Personally, I don't really think that's the route to go, because I would say more so than not having enough liquid in your wrap, it more has to do with you're either cooking too hot and the brisket is tightening up, or you're cooking too low for too long and it's just taking the brisket a really long time to break down. So for me, adding that fat is really something to play around with after you find to properly cook a brisket without the fat. Because I think if you do it or you're relying on that fat, you're not really focusing on like the first half of the cook, which is really important to get the texture right for the brisket. Ideally for myself, I would like to get a brisket like once it's wrapped up. I would say generally if they're really small, then possibly pulling them off in like 2 hours, but on average about 2 hours and 30 minutes, 2:45, and the really big ones are closer to 3 hours and 3 hours and 30. But if your briskets are staying there much longer, that's when you're gonna have your moist ends they're gonna be too soft, they're gonna be too mushy. All that bark is starting to flake off, before those leans ever get loosened up. So if that's an issue that you're seeing happen, I would say you would have to kind of rethink what your cook looks like in the first half of your cook, rather than just saying, keeping everything the same and just saying that I'm gonna throw tallow into my wrap and have that be the thing that fixes my issues. So I hope that helps you a little bit kind of think about what that process is used for. And again, if you guys use it, let me know. Put it in the comments down below. Have you tried cooking with fat inside your paper? Does it make a difference? Does it not? What are the benefits you find that works for it or against it? Personally, I don't like doing it because one, you have to have a lot of fat, and two, it's just a mess. I don't really like dealing with excess beef fat because the cook itself is already messy, and it's not necessarily a step that I feel like is essential to coming out with a really good brisket. So it might be something I try in the future if I'm stuck somewhere, but it's not something that I feel like I'm gonna be leaning on to get my briskets right. Alright, so that's going to be it for today, guys. So make sure you like, subscribe, share this video with your friends. If you have any other questions or topics that you want me to discuss, leave them down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.